Alright, so we're just about to go out to Micro Center to get some adapters that I need for plugging in more of these awesome LED signs. I don't have the back one on. Yeah, I need to get some couple splitters and some battery AC to DC converters. I see you, Joy. How are you? Really? Okay. You gotta sit down now. Micro Center. Oh, we got a new software update too. But we will download that one later. Start FSD. Maybe if this thing is ever going to decide to back up. Of course, why would you do that efficiently? And it actually did pretty good this time. I'll give the very cautious to pull out of here. Good view of the F-ELON and the Felon sign. I've gotten so many awesome comments about that from people walking by my house. Question mark? You don't think Trump is being a bit too friendly with our biggest adversary, Russia and Putin?
Indeed, we do. Here we are, everybody. Well, it's just the two of us, just me and Cho. It's sort of a POA edition of Well Read this week, if you will. In fact, I think it's going to be this way for a little while because Drew's basically taking the month off to run naked through the streets of New Orleans and everything, which he told us about.
He said 6 weeks. Maybe it's more than that. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. But
yeah, he may never come back. Just
we wish him well.
Not just this podcast, but to the world in general. But he's down there doing Mardi Gras stuff. I reckon he sent some video last night. He took a parade, and there was a guy on one of the parade floats dressed as a Roman soldier doing,
the Roman salute.
An Elon Musky type move. He did, Yes, and I was going to bring that up. It's like, so, he did what looked literally just like what Elon was doing, to the chest and then straight out, right? Y'all know the move I'm talking about. And I was thinking, it's like, some people say, it's like, that's not a Nazi thing. That's a Roman thing. But it's like,
but if it looks like it, don't do it.
But it's also like, is even that, Romans? Does that hit? I mean, I know that they don't have the PR. I know that people think the Romans are rad, but it's like, well, yeah. Even if you're doing a Roman thing, what are you trying to represent by doing that? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you trying to get across? Like, aqueducts really hit for you, roads really hit for you, or is it just like in slavery and empire, tyranny? Right.
But it's also just like all the people who were just like, well, the swastika actually meant yoga in India. It's like, okay. But what people think when they see it, and you're comfortable them thinking that hits for you, because that's what they're going to think, So just don't do it. It's like, dude, my dad, who's a goddamn Republican, like, was against, like, the rebel, like, when they got rid of the rebel flag, he was like, good. And all his buddies were like, yeah, but that it doesn't really, and my dad's like, it doesn't matter all this. He's like, when a black person or when anybody sees it, this is what they think. So when you fly it, you're comfortable with the general narrative being that you support that, and that's stupid. He's like, just let it go. Like, there's no reason. And that's the same thing with the fucking, it looks like a Heil Hitler.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had to land on with the Confederate flag in my youth or whatever, because growing up in fucking Clay County, I mean, I told you, I said on the podcast, whenever I went back to, like, clean out the house that I grew up in Salina that we then later sold, I found a truly comical amount of Confederate flag things. My favorite of which, I think, was a little like county fair picture in a cardboard frame of a Confederate flag background, and the foreground was an alien in a Confederate soldier uniform smoking a cigarette, which is like, what is that even supposed to be other than just like a couple things that are kick ass, all for trailer people. But and it sure did work on me. I sure did love it. I think
you have to get rid of it with an elder wand, because I'm pretty sure that's one of DJ's horcruxes.
I know. I definitely sent it to DJ immediately, because he's got, we used to always say he was like a Confederate alien, but I also, because when I was a kid, I thought I was Goodwill Hunting and I'm smarter than everybody else and all this stuff. Like, I was pretty argumentative for a long time about, because I had no frame of reference for realizing just how different and insane my hometown and my background and all this shit was. It's all I'd ever known.
Yeah, likewise.
So I was always just like, no, man, and that, because again, my dad, he loved, my dad fucked with the Confederate flag, and he loved Leonard Skinner, and they fucked with the Confederate flag and all this stuff, and it's like, that ain't what it's about, y'all. Like, I was like, sure, so.
Can you stay here for a bit?
Hey, buddy. Did you get that knocked out? Oh, yeah, knock that cable out. That was a bad stop. I'll try again, okay? Do you want me to put this down and you can go in the back? On your mat? No? You're okay up there? If you're good, I'm good.
couple of weeks ago.
Thank you, Chris. And special shout out to the folks that work at the VA. Some of you I'm very close to. You guys are doing amazing work. Thank you. That is all in for this week. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
You made it, Chris. You made it. Happy Friday, my friend. Enjoy the weekend. I will see you next week. Well,
all right.
Thanks. And thanks to at home for joining us this hour. Really happy to have you here this Friday night. I love days like this. I love news days like this. There's so much to show you. Here's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. People turned out to stand up for science. That was the name of the protest. To protest against the Trump administration's indiscriminate cuts to science in all ways. You can see some of the signs here. Fight for science.
No, I think I found these ones on Amazon.
Defend the NIH. Defunding research is a recession plan. That's actually quite true. Here's a good one. Quote, budget cuts create all kinds of trouble. I had to look that up. Alkynes, A-L-K-Y-N-E-S, alkynes are organic molecules made of the functional group carbon-carbon triple bonds.
Oh,
they are
yikes.
unsaturated hydrocarbons. And budget cuts create all kinds of trouble. Here's another good one in Pittsburgh. Got polio? No? Thanks, science. And you see where it says it's a Berg thing and the Salk vaccine there. The University of Pittsburgh is where Jonas Salk developed the polio vaccine. Across the state of Pennsylvania, outside City Hall in Philadelphia, look at this. This was this is impressive. This was the Stand Up for Science crowd outside Philly City Hall today. That's a big, look at that. That's a really big protest. Some good signs at the Philly protest as well. Your policy, defund the NIH, has been rejected by peer review. This is a good one. I feel like this one is special for Susan's birthday today. She loves Beaker from the... Susan, this happened in Philly today. This is the only orange Muppet I trust to tell me about science. Me. A version of this sign we saw a few different places today. I love trans mice. All right. I know you didn't listen to Trump's speech to Congress this week. I saw the numbers. It was the least watched Trump State of the Union or joint speech to Congress of all the ones he's given. So I know you didn't watch. But one of the things he said in his speech was that one of the terrible liberal things that his top campaign donor had discovered was happening in government was research to make mice transgender. And he said that in his speech, and all the Republicans gasped and laughed and jeered because that was so terrible. Actually, it's transgenic mice. And transgenic mice are used in all kinds of laboratory research because mice are transgenic when they have been genetically altered so you can study human illnesses and conditions in them even though they're mice. It is transgenic mice, you numbskulls. But sure, go ahead and shut down all the labs studying all the diseases, because what are you, 5? This was Boston. There were big crowds today in Boston as well. Stand up for science. Some signs in Boston. No science means no medicine, no tech, no progress, no future. Also this one, cut DNA, not the NIH. Genetics research and experimentation. Of course, because it's Boston, there's a Dunkin' Donuts sign. America runs on science. In Madison, Wisconsin, local public radio there put the turnout at what they described as more than 1,000 at the Stand Up for Science protest at the Wisconsin State Capitol. Wisconsin Democratic Party Chairman Ben Wickler said he was there and he thought the crowd was even larger than that. He also singled out his favorite sign in Madison, which was, quote, "No science, no cheese." It's Wisconsin. Really, really big crowd turned out in New York City at Washington Square Park to protest against Trump's cuts to science. Look at that. Cold day, cold, windy day today in New York City. 9 out of 10 preventable diseases prefer the GOP. Every disaster movie begins with a politician ignoring science. See the one on the left there? It was a cold, miserable Chicago winter day today in the Windy City, but people turned out in big numbers in Chicago as well to protest. In addition to all the scientists and supporters and regular people who showed up, they also got some high-level representation from their members of Congress, including Senator Dick Durbin and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. In Atlanta, there were big crowds in Atlanta at Liberty Plaza. Atlanta, of course, is home to the CDC, which Trump has whacked with big cuts and huge numbers of firings. People turned out in the South, in Little Rock, Arkansas, on the state capitol steps. Stand up for science. People turned out in Lansing, Michigan, with signs supporting the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We love NOAA. So stop firing the darn meteorologists and the people who run the freaking weather radar. People turned out in St. Louis, Missouri, which is a good science sign. Time to react with the steaming beaker. Raleigh, North Carolina, part of what they love to call the research triangle, but here are researchers and scientists and their supporters and regular folks having to come out in Raleigh, North Carolina today, protesting against Donald Trump's massive cuts to scientific research. The biggest protest today was in Washington, D.C. Literally thousands of people turned out to stand up for science and protest against Trump today. A really big turnout in Washington. Signs there include these. Science is not a liberal conspiracy. Fund science, save lives. Doge doesn't pass peer review. Also this one, very simply, cancer is not a partisan issue. This is a nice subtle one. Hello, Health and Human Services Secretary. Quote, science prevents brain worms. Stand Up for Science protests happened all over the country today. And this was a big national organizing effort that was led by a small cadre of people just directly affected by these cuts. Graduate students and doctoral candidates and young scientists called this march today in Washington, and then soon dozens of satellite marches sprung up all around the country, and you saw the evidence of that there. In addition to sort of nationally organized protests like that, we're also increasingly seeing just essentially local and independent protests pop up. Protests coming together in individual cities. Like this big protest yesterday in Trenton, New Jersey, people with disabilities and their families and just angry, worried members of the public turning out in Trenton yesterday protesting against the cuts.
Thank you for choosing Sonic. How can I help you today?
Hi, I just have a order pickup for Russ.
For Russ?
Yep.
Go ahead for it.
Thank you.
Covers tens of millions of people in this country. It covers more than 40% of all births in this country. People turned out in Trenton, New Jersey yesterday to say don't come. Along the same lines, just an independent single-segment city protest, there was this protest of worried, angry local folks in Nashville, Tennessee. Came out yesterday to protest, to defend Social Security, just right outside their local Social Security office in Nashville.
Protesters are pushing back tonight against possible staffing cuts at the National Social Security office. Thanks for joining us tonight at 10. I'm Lauren Lowry. Dozens of people rallied outside the office today. Our Sharon Dankwa has a look at why they say cuts could directly affect them here in the mid-state.
No voters, no cuts, protect SSA.
Today, we're gathered here not just as individuals, but as a community of people who understand the vital role that Social Security plays in so many lives.
Resources provided in this building, Jennifer Brinkman says so many could be taken for granted.
I know firsthand how essential these offices are, especially this office right here. When my significant other, Greg, was diagnosed with cancer and could no longer work, we turned to this office for help.
So when she heard the Department of Government Efficiency cut Social Security staffing nationwide by 50%, she organized this rally.
We made cancel for SSA.
I was in Nashville, Tennessee yesterday, some local coverage of that local protest standing up for Social Security. We've also been looking today at local news reports about brand new little grassroots groups springing up in places like central Minnesota. They're going to be protesting tomorrow in St. Cloud. Another one expected from a coalition of small local groups in Muskegon, Michigan this week. Republicans are now trying to sell the line
I think that one cuts the most.
Thank you. Could I get a drink here?
Yeah, of course.
That it is only paid protesters, professional, full-time protesters funded by shadowy globalists who are the people who are criticizing what Trump is doing. They're trying to say that none of these protests are real Americans, and any criticism of Trump is somehow inauthentic. That is just, I mean, I understand why they might
Sit down,
say
sit
that,
down.
but
Get back.
it is absolutely belied by what we are seeing every single day all over the country. It's honestly hard to keep track of the numbers of different ways and different places and different groups that are standing up and saying no. Protests are happening all over the country all the time. People are also pushing hard to get their Republican members of Congress to meet with them, to answer the constituents' questions about whether they agree with what Trump is doing.
That's my favorite. Comma.
Constituents are sometimes going to comedic lengths to try to get their members of Congress to agree to speak to them.
It might seem like the packed room at the UP 1st Congressional District Town Hall had front row access to District Representative Republican Jack Bergman. But at a closer glance, you will see they were talking to an empty chair. That's because Bergman did not attend.
They were invited. The receipts are here. What they said is they did not get a formal invitation.
Escanaba resident Teresa Ross organized the town hall.
Basically, I got mad and decided that phone calls to Representative Bergman's office was not cutting it, that I needed to do something more.
Bergman hasn't held a town hall in the UP since 2017. In an interview with TV6 last week, Bergman said town halls had become too disruptive, but he shows up for constituents in other ways.
He shows up for his constituents in other ways.
Like by not
Just
showing
not
up?
when they're there in Escanaba in his district and they want to talk to him. Congressman Jack Bergman has apparently been too afraid to hold a town hall with his own constituents for the past 8 years.
Chicken
But they
shit.
want to talk to him. He represents a district in northern Michigan, next door in Wisconsin. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan is going to hold a town hall in his Wisconsin district, and he is a Democrat. So he represents a Democratic district, but he is holding this town hall tomorrow way over in the corner of his district, as close as he can get to the neighboring congressional district that's represented by a Republican. By Republican Derek Van Orden. Mark Pocan, the Democrat, put out a press release today saying, quote, the town hall will be held less than 10 miles from the border of Wisconsin's 3rd congressional district, represented by Republican Derek Van Orden. Congressman Pocan has invited constituents from both his district and the neighboring 3rd district to hear from a member of Congress. The implication being that they're certainly not going to hear from their own.
I hear your
Pocan
broken
later
right
said
in my
online,
ear.
quote,
That's
we've
very
officially
loud.
invited Derek Van Orden to join us this Saturday at our town hall in Belmont. We are hearing he hasn't had an open public town hall, so we thought he could observe ours so that he could replicate in his district. Looking forward to him sharing his views.
You right, man.
So there's a lot to keep track of, obviously. There's so much that seems just indefensible or inexplicable from the Trump administration. It can be hard to keep up with it just on a day-to-day basis. Late tonight, for example, there's news from local offices of the National Weather Service
Don't bark.
that in Albany,
Right
New
here.
York, and in the state of Maine, the Weather Service is no longer able to launch its
Thank
weather
you very much.
balloons, which is a standard part of how they do weather forecasting. Put weather balloons up there to get sensitive atmospheric readings, temperature and wind data and dew point with relative humidity and barometric pressure, all of the stuff that you need to be able to make accurate weather forecasts. A couple of weeks ago, we had heard out of Alaska that they didn't have enough staff at their weather service offices to put up their weather balloons in Alaska. Now tonight we're learning that that is also true in Albany, New York, and in Maine. Cuts to the Weather Service, cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration are going to hit Americans right at home, right away. as already we can't do some of the forecasting things we would normally be doing on an average Friday night in March. Tonight, this hour, we're going to be talking about some of the really big ticket items that we're seeing going on, stuff that you have probably seen at least headlines about elsewhere. Our military and intelligence cutoff of Ukraine, basically making the overt and knowing decision to hand feed the Ukrainian people into the Russian army. We've got new news on that tonight, particularly on the boomerang effect that is coming back at us on the intelligence side. I think you're really going to want to hear about that. It's an interesting story. We've also got news tonight on more mass firings at the U.S. Department of Justice, where they really do appear to just be grabbing the building by the ankles, turning it upside down, and shaking out all the nonpartisan career people who work at the U.S. Justice Department so they can replace them all with Trump operatives. We'll have more tonight on both those stories, including an unsettling story that we are really trying to chase down about which apparently armed agents are playing a physical role in some of the things they are trying to do by force in Washington when it seems like they can't do them by law. That story, again, disturbing, something that we are still chasing, and that story's coming out. But I will also tell you, it is Friday night, and at the end of this 6th week of the Trump administration, it's clear you can't cover everything every day, and I get that, and I'm at peace with that. But I do feel like there's value in just trying to cover the field as much as possible, right? Trying to cover the pushback and the protests, especially when they're coming from places you wouldn't expect or from places the national media isn't always looking. So we're really trying to do that. I'm also just gonna keep trying to tell you some of the crazier or dumber things that are happening, even if they aren't getting a ton of attention elsewhere. And again, you can't cover everything, you gotta make decisions, but some of the stuff that I feel like I need to prioritize on the show is just stuff you might not be hearing from other news outlets. For example, I think it's worth all of us knowing that the Donald Trump Jr. hunting buddy, who they put in charge of food safety at the FDA once they started firing all the regular science people who work at food safety at the FDA, the Donald Trump Jr. hunting buddy, who they put in charge of human food safety for our country, is a man who apparently has no scientific background at all, but he does hunt with Don Jr., and he did serve as a defense lawyer for an infant formula manufacturer whose product was associated with a, quote, elevated risk of a deadly bowel condition in premature infants. He was the defense counsel for that infant formula manufacturer. For what it's worth, the FDA tells us that Don Jr.'s hunting buddy will comply with an ethics agreement that includes specific recusals related to the baby food formula company. But representing the baby formula company associated with a deadly bowel condition in premature infants is apparently what recommended him for Donald Trump to pick him among all other available choices as the person who should be in charge of human food safety for the United States of America. And so now, tonight, there he is. You should also know that among the people who Donald Trump has fired from the Department of Homeland Security now was the person who managed the, quote, Cyber Sentry program. What is the Cyber Sentry program? It was described by CBS News today as the, quote, congressionally mandated program designed to continuously monitor and detect cyber breaches of the nation's power grid, pipelines, and water system, installing sensors across critical infrastructure designed to detect insider threats and foreign adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran. Because, yeah, who wants us to be protecting our pipelines, our power grid, and our water systems from cyber attacks? Who wants that? Who wants to be protecting that stuff? Make America great again, am I right? Donald Trump just removed the leadership of that program. You should also know that Donald Trump has also just fired the government's foremost expert, the nation's, quote, national taxonomist of the specific pest that almost completely destroyed the Florida citrus industry just a few years ago in 2019. There is a guy in the U.S. government who is the scientist in charge of making sure that pest doesn't again get into the United States to decimate Florida citrus trees. Just 6 years ago, that happened, and it reduced Florida's citrus industry to, quote, ghost groves. Some experts were writing off Florida citrus entirely. That was a multi-billion-dollar crisis in 2019. Donald Trump just fired the guy in charge of making sure it doesn't happen again. One of the world's leading scientists on that particular agricultural problem and pest. You should also know that amid all of this genius, very intelligent cutting of the United States government, the Department of Homeland Security has somehow, this past week, found $30,000 to air television ads, specifically in West Palm Beach, Florida, over last weekend, while Donald Trump was at his house in West Palm Beach, Florida. These are ads that explicitly thank Donald Trump for being so great. And the Department of Homeland Security is now spending your tax dollars to air those ads thanking Donald Trump. The ads are running in West Palm Beach while Donald Trump is weekending in West Palm Beach. Ads just telling him he's great and reminding him who the Homeland Security Secretary is, who thinks he's so great. They're doing that with $30,000 in tax funds. But sure, the guy who keeps the thrips and psyllids off the orange trees in Florida, no, Trump fired him because we can't afford him. Can't afford that. So, again, our attention spans are finite. We all only have so much bandwidth. Time is finite. But I will do everything I can to bring you all the news I can, especially if I think it's stuff that you might not be running into other places. People all over this country are pushing back against what Trump is doing. People are pushing back in numbers, big and small, in some big national organizing efforts like we saw today, in little local uproars like we saw today, in town halls, whether or not they can shame that Republican congressman into actually turning up. I absolutely believe that information is power. But so is getting up and doing something about it. Everybody's doing their part. So we got lots to get to tonight. Stay with us.
If you have heart failure or chronic kidney disease, Farxiga can help you keep living life, because there are places you'd like to be. Serious side effects include increased ketones in blood or urine and bacterial infection between the anus and genitals, both which may be fatal. Severe allergic reactions, dehydration, urinary tract or genital yeast infections, and low blood sugar. Stop taking and tell your doctor right away if you have nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, tiredness, rash, swelling, trouble breathing or swallowing. Tell your doctor about lightheadedness, weakness, fever, pain, tenderness, redness or swelling between the anus and genitals. Ask your doctor about Farxiga today.
Sadly, windshield chips can turn into windshield cracks. But at least you can go to SafeLight.com and schedule a fix in minutes.
Sweet.
SafeLight can come to you for free. Don't wait. Go to SafeLight.com and schedule now.
Dry eyes still feel gritty, rough, or tired? With MyBo, eyes can feel MyBo is the only prescription dry eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause of dry eye, too much tear evaporation. For relief, that's MyBo. Remove contact lenses before using MyBo. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting them back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. Ask your eye doctor about prescription MyBo.
Tap into Etsy for home and style finds like custom shelving for less than $50 to make more space. Or linen robes under $75 to get you cozy. For affordable pieces to help you welcome big changes, Etsy has it.
Upset stomach? Iberogast. Indigestion? Iberogast. Bloating? Iberogast. Thanks to a unique combination of herbs, Iberogast helps relieve 6 digestive symptoms to help you feel better. 6 digestive symptoms, the power of nature. Iberogast.
Machine learning is advancing, but businesses wonder if some machines can keep up.
Let's welcome our new coworker, Jeff.
Copier has a great idea.
Wonder if it's the same idea as yesterday.
It's a performance issue, really. I know people push your buttons, but you still have to deliver.
Anything can change the world of work. ADP Assist is AI, informed by workplace data, and designed for the next anything.
Todd takes Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Hi, I'm Todd. I'm a veteran of 23 years. I served 3 overseas tours. I love to give back to the community. I saw a Prevagen commercial and I did some research on it. I started taking Prevagen about 3 years ago. I've told my coworkers and family since taking Prevagen how much of a difference it's made in my life. I feel really good.
Prevagen, for your brain.
When you break down the cost, it's basically free. 9 tablets for $7 for 100 milligram generic Viagra from Friday Plans means each one costs less than $1, and that includes the prescription and shipping. Go to FridayPlansPills.com to get this deal. It's FridayPlansPills.com.
After Homoglow cleaned our place for $19, we fired our old housekeeper.
You ready to get up? Let's go. Okay. Come on. Come on, you can go. Up. There you go. Oh, you got a little Jethro out, yeah. There you go, bud. Oh.